Hello and welcome to Bulletin Bytes, your podcast on the Bulletin box. I'm your host, Zareen. Your favorite content platform, the Bulletin box, is continuing to fight for a social cause in collaboration with the Ethical Badass Factory. And I bring to you part 2 of the series about workplace bullying. I bring you people from different walks of life and different regions of the world to address this problem. Now, why is bullying such an issue? Besides destroying and demoralizing the individuals who are targets of bullying, it tears into the reputation of individuals and companies alike. It tears into productivity of organizations and it costs companies worldwide millions, note that billions of dollars. Now, if bullying is not a serious problem in companies, then what is exactly? So our guest for this session is Jonathan Wilson with us from the United Kingdom. Jonathan has an interesting profile. He has over 28 years of experience with the Metropolitan Police of the United Kingdom, with much of that time spent in senior leadership roles. His time with the department led him to work with diverse communities, businesses, and across a number of government departments, including the Home Office and the Mayor of London's office, as well as internationally. Jonathan has considerable experience in preventive strategies, legislative changes, working with vulnerable groups, as well as partnership work. He has recently retired from the police service after a traumatic experience of workplace bullying. He now dedicates much of his time to educating and challenging workplace bullying behavior, which he says is entirely preventable. Jonathan now talks widely across social media and to businesses in person about psychological safety at work. He lives in Cornwall and has also established a family business running holiday cottages. Welcome, Jonathan. It's our absolute pleasure to have you here.
Hello.
Hey there.
Hi.
Nice meeting you. I hope things are all right. You mentioned the storm in the UK. I hope that's okay now and things are settled down.
Yes, it's all good again now. Thanks.
Awesome, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us again. So, Jonathan, we would like to know a little more from you about your story. Would you mind sharing with us about what led you to this passionate fight that you have taken up, which, if I'm not wrong, is totally for a social cause with absolutely no commercial angle attached to it? Am I correct?
Yeah, there's absolutely no commercial angle connected to this. I experienced bullying and gaslighting at a senior level within the Metropolitan Police, and there was such a significant impact on my health and my confidence, my ability to conduct my life both at work and at home and in my private social life. I ended up suffering from quite significant trauma, and it impacted me for over 3 years. And it forced me to retire early from the police. That I decided that when I had left, and as I started to recover, that I was going to devote a lot of my time to raising awareness about bullying, to help others see if it was happening, because gaslighting is very subtle, quite poisonous and very dangerous, and tears away one's own perspective of reality.
True.
And I wanted to educate other people and also to educate other leaders in organizations about the harm that it does and the fact that they can lose staff, etc. My experience happened when I had about 25 years police service. I'd been in quite a senior rank at that period for 3.5 years.
Okay.
And I was posted into a particular command within the Metropolitan Police where I'd worked before, and I knew there was a strong element of nepotism of people who'd worked through different ranks and remained principally within that command. I wasn't their choice. I was posted in there by a very, very senior officer, actually the person who's now the commissioner of the police. Their choice to put me in there. and I had a job to push forward a new or a fairly young strategy that the government and many senior politicians had an intense interest in. There was resistance to that work. Along with that resistance and the challenges that I faced with officers above me, not all of them, but several of the senior officers above me, I also challenged several things that were wrong. At that point, having had 25 years police experience and seen probably, I thought at the time, everything, the worst of anything that life could throw at me, and having been in a senior position, I felt fairly confident about making those challenges against those wrongs.
I'm sure.
And against the remaining status quo. At first, I didn't quite notice the bullying. I felt that I saw things which were part of the, a continuation I saw of the bad behaviour and bad management, and thought I was dealing with just difficult people, and thought I'd continue to carry on work, making appropriate challenge where possible. I had two principal bullies. One of them was also a very, very harmful and significant gaslighter. He was senior to me. He would call me into my office and tell me that I'd upset unidentifiable people, and in the way that I'd spoken to him, etc. He used examples, and this happened on several occasions. There was no prior announcement. I was just called into an office, and it was thrown at me. He used the fact that people who worked beneath me, certain people beneath me, had been upset with me, which was really difficult because I had a very good working relationship, and I still have people who work for me then who say that was nonsense, and I'm still in contact with them. They come down to visit me in Cornwall. He was using other examples of other people that upset me. Never would he identify the individuals, and never would he identify the context. So it's very, very subjective. He was claiming that he'd heard something, and obviously they had to be believed. I was never given a chance to even understand, or if necessary, explain a circumstance. The point where it actually started to become clear that he wasn't necessarily telling the truth was, definitely wasn't telling the truth. It wasn't a case of not necessarily telling the truth, definitely wasn't telling the truth, was when a time that he told me that I'd upset people from different government departments. Now, those people from different government departments, particularly one of those departments, I was very good friends with, and went out socially a lot with, who was quite frustrated about that. I know that someone from another department, a senior manager from another government department, actually approached him and said that that wasn't the case. And then later on, he called me in for another, what I call a hijack meeting, where there was no agenda, no notice before. He called me into another meeting, and this is about after 18 months. He called me in and said, if you want promotion, you have to leave. And he claimed the manager above him had said that. And I said, well, I didn't want promotion. I was happy doing the work that I did. And the conversation ended. A week later, he phoned me up and he told me that that manager above him, had told him I had to leave my position because because of this apparently upsetting these other government departments. At which point it became quite clear to me, because he had actually been told by one of those government departments at least, that that wasn't the case. And then when it eventually came through in paper, I was told that I needed to move for further operational development, which was rather surprising, because for the last 2 years, one of the things that I'd been questioning was my line manager's approach around performance development reviews, which basically was a précis of the last 12 months work that I'd done, which I'd had to provide to them, and a couple of scores. There was never any constructive criticism or development needs identified, and I'd sort of pointed out to them in some of the wrongs that were being done. Personal development plans are about raising and identifying areas of development for a member of staff, and there's no point in them otherwise. So suddenly, some development that over 18 months, 2 years had never been mentioned was used as an excuse to move me, and even then it was unspecific. I didn't know what those development needs were.
Mm.
I asked to go and see one of the most senior officers in the Metropolitan Police because of the seniority of the levels. That was the level I had to go to. She made an appointment to see me a week later. When I went in to see her and I started recounting what I'd been going through, she sat there and responded, "That's your view. That's your view." Everything
Wow.
I said, with quite a cold, hard face and a look of contempt. As I'd realised I was getting nowhere, that
Yes.
she'd obviously spoken to the bullies before me and had taken a subjective view to the whole incident itself anyway. I sort of clammed up. I always say to people, I went into that meeting with her a broken man and I left destroyed. It was quite obvious that what she was employing was a tactic which is used in domestic violence as well. And there are a lot of similarities between the controlling behaviour of domestic violence and bullying. And that tactic has an acronym of DAVO, which is to deny, attack, and then reverse the victim and offender. So to deny that the behaviour that has been raised happened, then attack the person raising that bad behaviour, and then to reverse the roles of the victim and the offender. Over the next, I eventually moved post, and I found that the gaslighting continued, and that senior officer that I'd been to see actually had made contact with people in the new department that I was going to, and had continued to spread the rumours that she had made that subjective judgment about that of being true. And over the next 12 months, I just gradually found my self-confidence eroding. I'd been in a position where at times I'd managed 150 odd staff, and I found that I was losing confidence to manage staff, or to speak up about things that were going wrong. I was losing confidence in my own personal life as well. I wasn't going out as much. I was losing sleep at night. I wasn't sleeping. And eventually, after about 12 months, I ended up going to see the doctor and going off sick, initially signed off with stress. I went through a number of cognitive behavior therapy sessions of counselling. And when I say session, I mean the full course of 10 weeks and then another 10 weeks with another counsellor. I spent time with the local mental health trust. I had severe depression, anxiety. When I went to visit police buildings, there was a case of when I had to go into police buildings to perhaps see a doctor or a manager, there was an avoidance. I was sort of approaching the building stealthily to make sure that I wasn't going to come across anyone. It didn't matter whether I knew them or not. I just didn't want to see anyone. And at one point, I had to go and see a manager on the 20th floor of a building, and I used to take the stairs up to see him rather than take the lift because I didn't want to bump into anyone in the lift.
Sure.
Yeah. So yeah, the impact was pretty terrible. I kept being off sick, going back to work, not being able to cope, not being able to think. And eventually I decided, and having spoken to counsellors as well, the best thing to do for my own health and well-being was to leave an occupation that I'd absolutely loved. I'd lost all trust in the organisation the moment I had that experience with that most senior officer, who wasn't interested in an objective investigation. It was purely subjective. All of the values and the ethics that I'd believed the organisation wanted to uphold just seemed like, how can I say, I describe it as the glossy cover of the magazine, with the contents being very, very different from what the magazine on the outside showed. So yes, that was the reason and my experience.
So are these people who bullied you, are they still continuing to serve in the police force?
The gaslighter I know now has retired. the manager above them was responsible for bullying as well, as I think has now taken on was progressed to a much more senior rank, and is now working in has retired but is back working with the police in a non-police management role, police officer management role. And then the senior officer I went to see is now is even more senior, probably just one from the top of the organisation. So yes, the culture's still there, and the problem with it is by allowing that to happen, that officer has shown to others that that sort of behaviour is acceptable, and has allowed it to progress, you know, etc. And more people. And I think the police are seeing the problem of this now. There's been a lot of bad news around the police and behaviour. And I think the very fact that people will obviously be scared to speak up if they see what happened to people like me who had confidence to speak up, and they see what happened to people like me, I can understand why many people would be scared to speak up about other things. And in that way, an organisation is leaving itself very blind if it's going in the wrong direction, from, you know, being able to see what's going wrong and being able to rectify things early.
So they bullied you, and then when you complained, there was no action taken. You were made out to be somebody who's complaining without reason. And then finally, those who bullied you are doing well for themselves now. And as you rightly mentioned, there has also been some news about the UK police recently, of this gentleman, this policeman who I think abducted and raped a lady and murdered her. I think that was international news that became that went viral. So I can completely get what you're saying, that there has been negative news as well. And though probably this would not be classified as bullying, but it's kind of the same behavior, repeated in a more violent way. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, in that particular case, in that case, what they had actually said was that other police officers had seen the behaviour of that individual and seen that it's questionable behaviour by that individual earlier, but had been afraid to speak up. This is the problem with this sort of culture where people are afraid to speak up. Now, the police will tell you they've got these anonymous hotlines, etc., etc. But when someone who doesn't even need an anonymous hotline like myself and is speaking up about far less serious things, but challenging wrongs, and the status quo is treated in the way that I was treated, one can understand why people would be scared to speak up in an organisation like that.
Absolutely. Very true. Very true. Thanks for sharing your experience, Jonathan. I'm sure that must have been difficult. I'll go to the second question now. What would be clear to everybody by now, after hearing what Jonathan went through, is that bullying is a terrible thing to do. But Jonathan, why do people bully? Are they not aware that what they are doing is bullying? Are they not aware of the consequences of their actions, both in themselves and the target of bullying?
So, that's a very complex question, because for some people, it's a learned behavior. If I use the example that I just gave, the moment that senior officer showed that the organisation was prepared to accept that type of behaviour and to cover it up or to deny that it had occurred, they're sending a message to others that that's acceptable behaviour. So other managers below that manager may have looked on, all those two managers may have looked on and thought, that's a way to manage a problem. If someone's saying something that's uncomfortable, that's an acceptable way to manage them. So for some people, it's a learned behavior, and organizations need to do more about educating people about what bullying is. For others, and this could still be the same reason, I think bullying is quite often motivated by an insecurity, personal insecurities. Now, I've heard other people who have been targeted in bullying saying, no, my bully was completely confident. Well, they may be outward looking, but internally, I think that they recognize individuals and see them as particular threats. So, you know, by me challenging wrongs, that was a threat. By me challenging the status quo of how things had been done, that may have been a threat, because those people may have thought he's saying, you know, he's subverting, saying we weren't doing our job properly, which wasn't the case. I was just saying we need to move forward. This is a new area of work, and this can be harnessed to improve service delivery, etc. So I feel that it's often driven by insecurity, or the fact that the target may be the fact that the target may be a threat in the way, even if the target has no intention to be a threat or to cause the other person any sort of distress. But it's a way of controlling sort of the bullies' insecurities, etc. I think.
So you are saying that some of them are not aware they are causing stress and distress to the target of bullying. They're not aware that their behavior is wrong.
I don't. I think some of them. I think for some of them, it's actually a learned behavior, and I often think that many of them as well. Actually, it's particularly, you know, I mean, some bullies are narcissists, and they don't care what the impact of their behavior is. And there's also a thing that's called there's the ethical. It's ethical harm. I think that's the term, but it's where a person sees the purpose of what I'm trying to achieve is greater than the individuals below me, and therefore if they're harmed in some way, it's of no consequence, because I have my purpose. I need to drive through what I'm doing, etc. And in that way, they dismiss or diminish the harm. So, you know, with that senior officer who I went to see, we were doing a very, very important piece of, you know, policing, very, very important to public safety. She may have had that ethical thought of the greater good is I need to make the whole of this unit work. And if this guy has now raised the fact that I've got two senior managers bullying him, there's going to be a storm if I allow that to come out, and that could disrupt the direction of the organization. But what she's failed to see is that she's then left in place a culture that has been going on for years and has just been strengthened by her support, a negative, harmful culture that is perpetuating, becoming stronger, and leaving many, many more people feeling scared to speak up, you know, and just acquiescing to the culture and keeping their heads down, or even becoming what we'd call the flying monkeys, where they come in and they actually join and support the bullies, because they want to safeguard their own security and protection and make sure the bully doesn't pick on them next.
So the greater good actually translates into the greater bad, you know, when such individuals ignore the effects of what they're doing. So true.
Yes.
Jonathan, that was a great explanation, and one that I'm sure our viewers agree with. How about, Jonathan, the after effects of bullying? How, in your opinion, does this affect the target of bullying? And looking at the bigger picture, why should companies take bullying so seriously? You have, of course, thrown some light on it of what happened in the police department, but maybe if you could put some numbers to it. And what are the costs that a company bears, again, with some numbers, when it has a culture that permits bullying at all levels?
Okay. Well, I'll be very careful with numbers, because numbers differ around the world. But what I would say from all the papers that I've read is you are looking at a minimum of about 1/3 of the adult workforce in any country has at some point in their working career either experienced or witnessed bullying. Now, even if they haven't experienced it personally but have witnessed it, it still has that harmful impact, because if they see that bullying taking place, often human nature is, I don't want that to impact on me. So I'm going to keep quiet and I'm going to acquiesce.
Mm.
The consequences to an organization of bullying are that it decreases morale, enthusiasm. People aren't as motivated to work hard or to speak up to suggest improvements or identify things that are going wrong or aren't the best direction to take. This isn't just in police, this is across all employment sectors. I think also people who are in that position are unhappy. So whilst targets of bullying may often leave their jobs because of the mental harm and physical harm to their health because of bullying, there are others that become unhappy with work because they see themselves in this, harmful, toxic work environment and decide to leave.
Yeah.
There you have people going off sick because of harmful, toxic environments. So you've got a problem with recruitment and retention. If the message gets outside the organization that it's a harmful, toxic organization, less people are going to be enthusiastic about going to work for that organization.
Of course.
You're going to have problems with retention because people are going to leave the organization. And there's huge costs then in the recruitment and retention, bringing in new people, training people up. Often with bullying, it's people who are quite hardworking and productive that end up being the target. So often an organisation loses good employees and not infrequently some of its potentially its best employees as well. So there's those costs. There are litigation costs for companies when and certain countries now have brought in legislation around workplace bullying. In the UK, that certainly isn't the case. But if you have a protected characteristic under the Equality Act in the UK and you've suffered workplace bullying, then often it's possible to take seek a legal remedy through that equality legislation. But the same as in other countries, lots of times, targets of bullying because of the harm they've suffered will seek a legal remedy. So there's the litigation costs for the organisation. There's the lost productivity, the costs of people being off sick, the extra management time that's embroiled in resolving these issues if they are resolved, or trying to hide them if they're hidden and denied. So the costs there are quite phenomenal. And then if you take that outside the organisation, if you look at, and I'll use myself as an example, the amount of time that I spent in and out of medical care and trauma counselling, etc., costs to the National Health Service, and then the cost to my family because I had a young daughter at the time. I couldn't really stop communicating with her and my wife because the whole thing was going around in my head. I was constantly ruminating and sort of fading out of life. So the costs are absolutely phenomenal. And often people who suffer from trauma, medical evidence has shown that people who've suffered from trauma and stress then can be susceptible to other types of physical illness like cancer or heart attack, stroke, etc. So the costs go on and on and on. So quite phenomenal.
Right.
I described in your opening question the sort of behaviour, what had happened to me. So I won't go into that, about the impact on me at the time of my client. So I won't repeat that again. But
Great. The fourth question now, Jonathan. Bullying, as you rightly said, is a worldwide problem. Now, unfortunately, some of our viewers have been targets of bullying in the past or are targets of bullying at this point of time, or they have a friend who's a target of bullying at their workplace. Could you share one tip with them, Jonathan, that will empower our audience to tackle a bully much better?
So the thing that I would say, as soon as you feel that there's some behaviour towards you, that you feel is not quite right, you feel that it isn't good management or good behavior from colleagues, I think you really should start making a note and recording all of those incidents that happen, because each one of them may be very, very small, but you need to record that in the diary, because as it progresses over the month, it will start to show a very strong picture. And often, you know, one or two incidents aren't the end of it, and it will go on and on and on. So just, you know, quietly record the incident, so you can say when, where something happened, what was said, what was done, and just have a record of it and build it up, etc. Because it's really, really difficult. What you will always find with people who bully is that when they're called out about it, they will deny it. And quite often they will try to deny it and switch the blame onto you and say, no, that was about you and what you did, etc. So you need to make a really good record so that you can come back and say, no, I've got this record and there's this incident and this incident. And I would say to you, as the bullying intensifies, and particularly if gaslighting is used, your mind ends up in such a confused state eventually that it's very difficult to try and, you know, in a one-off meeting recall this happening or that happening, etc. So you've got a chronological record of everything that's happened. That's probably the best thing you could have for defending yourself, protecting yourself from the bully in the end.
Right. So the bully would probably say that you did this and, you know, your behavior triggered my bullying to justify their behavior.
Yeah, well, they might say, so I'll give you an example of the gaslighting for me. It was, the example was, I was only trying, you know, when I raised these issues about him upsetting people, I was only trying to help him. Well, he definitely wasn't trying to help me, because he wasn't giving me any context of what I might have done to have upset people. He wasn't giving me any context about who those people were. He wasn't interested in hearing if I had a version of the story, if there was an account to give. I'm not sure that any of those incidences were real anyway, but his then response was, I was only trying to help him. You know, so there's that sort of subtle twist. These people are quite adept at twisting the truth to make themselves look as if they are trying to help people. So yeah, it's just, you just need to have a record and you know, and to be able to point all that out. I mean, unfortunately for me, when this happened, you know, as I say, I consider myself a very resilient figure, and I didn't understand what it was doing to my mental health as it progressed over 18 months. So by the time it came to me making a complaint as well, my mind, I hadn't made records, etc. And my mind was in a real state of confusion and turmoil. So yes, I think that's probably the best advice I could offer.
Thank you, Jonathan. And before we sign off, do you have anything to say to our audiences to take back and reflect on?
I think I think one of the things that's really, really important that's come to light for me is that, and I said that earlier, actually, I've got to add this. Earlier, I said an ethical injury. The word that I was looking for was moral injury, and look up the term moral injury. Okay. What I would say to the audience is some of the terms that I've used, like the DAVO, deny, attack, reverse, victim, offender, the gaslighting, moral injury, go away and Google them on the internet and start to read about them. Learn a little bit more, because if you do, whether you're in a management position or in the position of a target, you will start to recognize those, you know, those behaviors more as you familiarize yourself with what those tactics and incidences are, and get more information. You can get quite readable articles. It'll only take a few minutes, which actually give you so much. So I would say go away and have a look at those terms that I've mentioned.
Yeah, that was great advice. Everybody, I think, in a management position needs to do that. And also, if somebody is worried about their own behavior and is wondering whether their behavior crosses a certain line, maybe, you know, they can do that as well. Thanks, Jonathan. We are nearing the end of this podcast. Thank you, Jonathan, so much for this talk. I learned a lot from you about the systems that support bullying, about how we can make safer workplaces a reality, and a lot of these terms that will be, I'm sure, very helpful to our viewers, and also the tip that you shared, document things when they happen to you so that you have a record of what's happening. That was a great tip. Thank you a lot. Guys, I would leave Jonathan's LinkedIn details here on the Bulletin Bytes as well as the Bulletin box. You should go check out his work against bullying, which I reiterate is purely a social cause. It's me, Zareen, your host, signing off. Remember, support us in our bullying campaign by following our Vodcast and all the social media handles of the Ethical Badass Factory and the Bulletin box.